Hey, what's up, and welcome back to Pointman Live, the live version of the Pointman podcast. My name is Zach. Be joined by Luke here in just a few minutes as we are. It's an exciting night as we are unveiling the next semester of Pointman's topic, as well as kind of going ahead and kicking things off a little bit with that topic and what that looks like. I'm excited for this upcoming semester of Pointman, which will be kicking off on January the 17th and we'll be running through February the 7th at both the Sherwood campus. That's right, at the campus in Sherwood, as well as at that church in Cabot. We're going to be on campus at both Sherwood and Cabot this semester, kicking off on January the 17th and running through February the 7th. And we got an exciting thing coming up for the semester. We have a giveaway chance for you. We're going to be giving away a drone at both the Sherwood and the Cabot campus for the next semester of Pointman. So there's a link in the comments. Hit that link, get registered. Let us know that you'll be at Pointman on that first night, January the 17th. You have to be there to win, but you have an opportunity to register now. That'll get you one entry, as well as being there on the first night will get you another one. We may even have a couple opportunities for you to sign up in person for that giveaway for the first night of Pointman 2024. That's January the 17th at 6:30 p.m. Sherwood and at Cabot. Also, we've got new merch available. Act Like Men sweatshirts. If you missed what those look like, head over to last week's episode and you'll see I had one in my hand that says Act Like Men across the front, Pointman on the back. Super cool, but $25, the new Act Like Men Pointman sweatshirt for the semester that is kicking off next month. Available whenever you see someone from Pointman. We'll get you one hooked up, $25 for those, and we'll have them at the semester night on January 17th. All right. It's about that time. Drum roll, please. Thought I had a drum roll sound effect. I might. Let's see. Do we have one? Drum roll, drum roll. This is kind of one, I guess. Not really. But the next semester of Pointman's topic title is Act Like Men. Who'd have thought? We have Act Like Men sweatshirts. The next Pointman semester topic is also titled Act Like Men. It's a study of the iconic men of the Old Testament. And I could not be more excited for this semester of Pointman. This is the way we're going to kick off 2024. We're starting the second, I believe, Wednesday of the new year, maybe the third Wednesday of the new year. And you need to be there. Make this what you do in 2024. On Wednesday nights, you are at Pointman when we are in session. Be there. It's an incredible time for guys to get together. It's a Bible study that's designed for you, for men, and we want you to be a part of it. Again, the study is titled Act Like Men. It is a study of the iconic men of the Old Testament. Something we're going to be doing over the next few weeks, month, is we are going to be walking through on the podcast and on lives. Anywhere you're seeing this, we're going to be talking about men in the Bible. We're going to be looking at them a little differently than maybe you've thought about them in the past. Maybe you've heard the stories that they're a part of. Maybe you have read the iconic stories, the Sunday school stories that involve these men in scripture and in history. But we're going to be looking at them a different way. We're going to be looking at them as men, how they live their life, what we can take from that and apply to our life in modern times and modern day. As part of this study, Act Like Men. We only have 4 weeks of the semester, and we're going to focus on 4 specific men over those 4 weeks. But here on the podcast and on the lives and all the things that we're doing, we're going to be talking about other men in the Old Testament, guys that we're not going to discuss in the 4-week semester itself, but we will dive into them in conversations and things like tonight. Luke's having some technical difficulties, so I hope we get to kick this thing off tonight talking about one of those men in the Old Testament. But I will tell you this, we just recorded an episode about Noah, so that'll give you a hint. Noah is not one of the 4 men that we will be talking about during the semester, but we had an incredible conversation. Ian Miller was a part of that, part of our Pointman team, and he was also on that podcast discussing Noah, who he was as a man, what made him significant in scripture, but also what made him man, what made him human, maybe some faults he may have had, how we can take some lessons from that and apply it into our life. So I'm excited for this study. I'm excited for the podcast and things. We're going to try to bring Luke on now, and we're going to dive into the first night of Act Like Men on here on Pointman Live. What's up?
What's up? I don't know. My connection's terrible. I'm sorry, guys. I did the lighting, I did the background, and then all of a sudden my internet connection is no good. So we'll see how it works out.
It's looking better right now. It's better than it has been since we jumped on here to get started. So that's good news.
Send prayers up, so the Lord help us out for sure.
Yeah, that's right. Give us the Wi-Fi, please, sir. But yeah, so we are kicking off this conversation we're titling Act Like Men. Act Like Men is the study we're going to be doing in Pointman. There's a couple of podcast episodes that are not Act Like Men that you may see come out here in the next couple of weeks that we already had recorded. But everything we are focused on going forward is men of the Old Testament. We're talking about them as dudes, as men, and what we can apply and take from that. And maybe some guys like tonight that you've not really ever thought about. They're iconic for one way or another, but maybe they don't stand out. They weren't in the Sunday school stories necessarily. They weren't in those like the top 5 greatest hits of the Old Testament, if you will. But they're still significant. There's still things that we can take from their stories and lessons we can learn from what occurred to them and what happened through their life, and what we see about them in scripture. So tonight we were talking about a man named Mordecai.
Mordecai, yes, not Morticia.
I was about to say, that was hilarious. Luke sent me a text. He's like, hey, you want to talk about Morticia? And I was like, maybe not the Addams family podcast. But yeah, Mordecai. Mordecai is found in the book of Esther.
Yep. Yeah, so Mordecai is a very, the character itself, it's in the book of Esther, so it's like mostly the story is about Esther, which if you've never actually read the story of Esther, I would challenge you and I would get you excited to go actually read it, because the story itself is like, it's awesome, and it needs to be a book, and it needs to be a play, and it needs to be like, they need to like really do it. I guess it already is a book. I don't know why I said that. It needs to be a movie and a play, because it's just
it goes right into what I've said over and over again, and we've talked about in the past, of like the entire Old Testament is a made for TV like HBO series. And each, like, you could pull out a book and make a season. I mean, the stories are pretty crazy and they're pretty incredible. And Esther's really no different. I was thinking earlier, it's just like Pointman to take a book that's really like women like to focus on it and read it. Leave it to us to find the one dude in it and pull him out and talk about him.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. So I read the book of Esther on my own during my morning devotional, and then I told Jason, like, hey, let's read the book of Esther, because I was like, man, it's so good. I just read it again, just kind of bring it back and just like in your brain. And then so we read it together, and we're like, man, so good. And then I was like, let's do it on the podcast. She's like, it's more about Esther, right? Not more Mordecai. I was like, Mordecai. I'm like, we'll talk about Mordecai anyway. It'll be fine. It's all good.
Yeah, well, I think it's cool because he is a significant figure in the story. But he's not a man that whenever you're like, give me your top 10 dudes in the Bible, Mordecai is not in your top 10, probably.
No, it doesn't come up. No.
Yeah. So it's cool that you brought him up, and it's cool that we're talking about him in this kind of series where we're looking at these men and we're looking at what occurred, and not necessarily the stories are important, but we're looking at them as men and what we can glean from the story itself, not focusing in on the story that is played out in scripture.
Yeah, so we'll talk about it a little later on, but like, he does such amazing things. He's such a man of faith in the Bible. And then I was trying to find, like, I know this series is like trying to find like the human part of the old men in the Old Testament. Like, this dude's a killer guy. Like, he really hammers it home. So maybe we might have a couple of maybe faults we could find, maybe try to piece together one. But he's overall great guy. Does exactly what he's supposed to do, I believe, what God tells him to do.
Yeah. Yeah, he's interesting. So give us just some like basic run through the story of Esther. What's going on? What happens here? If you've never read it, give me like the cliff note.
Yeah, so this is gonna be the very cliff note of the cliff notes. So this is 100 years after the Babylon exile. whatever that means. I mean, that you can look into it, read that what that is. It's just how the
Yeah.
story starts. And then
And
so
if you want to know like other aspects, go to Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar, and there you go.
yes, so this is only starts out telling you there's a great king named King Xerxes, and he has a queen named Queen Vashti, and he doesn't like they get in a big fight. So he's like, okay, I'm not gonna hang out with you anymore. I'm gonna actually get a new queen. He makes a decree, which is kind of wild, that says all men will be the masters of their home. Which is, I don't know what your thoughts about when you read that. Like after he finds out, like I'm not gonna be with this queen anymore. He's like, all men are now gonna be the master. Were they not already the
Well,
master of the?
there
Maybe
was
there was no
like,
decree saying
well,
that there had to be one.
well, in the story, it's discussing like part of the reason why he throws her out and exiles her is because uh he's scared that his like
Mm-hmm.
power will be thwarted by her
Mm-hmm.
rejecting him. And so
Right.
his advisors are like, hey, this sets a bad example for all men in the
Mm-hmm.
kingdom, which is a whole nother conversation and not really what we're here
Yep.
for
No.
tonight. But that's why he does it. Does your Bible on in verse one, read verse one of Esther if you've got it with you?
Just
I'm just
just
curious
chapter
about
one, verse one.
verse one. Yep.
All right, it says, these events happened in the days of King Xerxes, who reigned over
Yep. Right,
127
that's fine.
provinces.
That's interesting. So
Mm,
difference in Bible
mhm.
translation, and I didn't
Yep.
look into this before, so I probably should have. I apologize, but mine says now in the days of Ahasuerus. It's not Xerxes in mine. When you said that, I was like, "That's interesting." I've never heard that. But anyway, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so yeah,
Same thing,
X,
probably different name.
yeah, XERXES. And when I listen
So,
to it, it says Xerxes, so that's just how I pronounce it. Xerxes
yeah.
is the
Oh,
same name that they have in the movie 300. I don't know if that makes a difference. I don't know if they're actually talking about him. Doesn't matter.
yeah.
He's an
I'm
awesome,
sure they do.
very, very powerful king, and he had his parties that he had were like months. They had a party and it lasted a month just because he was like, I'm the richest guy, and everyone knows that I'm the king, and everybody is going to listen to me. So they have parties that last forever. Anyway, besides the point, he just has a lot of splendor, a lot of money. Everybody looks up to him. He's the boss of a lot of people. So he basically says, I'm not going to be with my queen anymore. I'm going to get a new queen. So they go out and grab a bunch of virgins that are in the just in the local area and all throughout his empire. And one of them happens to come from a Jewish family, a Jewish tribe, and is the adopted daughter of Mordecai, which is Esther. And so Haman comes into the story a little bit later, but he gets a fight with Mordecai. Mordecai's like, I'm not going to bow down to you and the king, and I'm going to actually be the boss. And Mordecai's like, no, I'm not going to happen. This is my daughter. This is my daughter, adopted daughter, and she's in the palace, and I'm not going to have that happen. So actually, Haman gets extremely mad and says, okay, I'm going to make a decree, and I'm going to actually have all the Jews killed. And so he makes a day on the calendar and says all the Jewish people are going to be killed because I hate Mordecai because he's not bowing down to me. And all this time, Mordecai is talking to Queen Esther, and she is now kind of like, I mean, she's like boss because King Xerxes says you can have whatever you want, do whatever you want. You can have literally half my kingdom. He tells her a couple times. So like Mordecai is basically kind of in charge because he has the ear of his daughter and she'll listen to whatever he says. But he's always a good Christian guy, never bows down to the guy named Haman, who was like second in charge. And so he
Jewish.
does not
He was Jewish, not Christian.
do what?
Jewish, not Christian, just for
Jewish. I'm sorry, Jewish. Yes, I'm sorry. My bad. So okay, so then Haman decrees that he's going to kill all the Jews. He rolls the dice for the day, and then they have a giant banquet and celebrating everything that's going to about to happen. So then Esther and Mordecai plan to reverse the decree. They make a little plan saying what's going to happen. And whenever Mordecai actually finds out that the plan is to kill all the Jews, he actually puts sackcloth, like basically what you put old potatoes in, puts that on and throws ashes on his head. There's a lot of times in the Bible where people get really sad and they put the sackcloth on and throw ashes on their head. I don't know what the significance of that is, but when people are in
like a
deep, deep
sign of
sorrow,
mourning.
that's what they do.
Yeah, it's like a sign of mourning. Yeah.
yeah, and like kind of like petitioning to God, like I am so sad and distraught about the situation that I'm in that you need to see it. And because I don't know, if you're just sitting there in a potato sack and you got ash all over your head, I feel like this is just a, that person's really sad because no one else is going to sit in a sackcloth. And
Yeah, I'm trying to
put
remember
that.
somewhere in the Old Testament, there's a point where, um, like, even the animals are put in sackcloth. I
Yeah.
forget what it is.
What story is that? We'll think of it in a minute. I know what you're talking about though. And we talked about at Pointman where they actually put the animals in sackcloth.
Yeah.
Forgot about that. That is hilarious. Go out there and putting one on a cow out in the pasture, like get
Yeah, let's
off my.
wait while you keep going, I'll find it.
All right, okay. So uh, he actually after Haman makes this decree, I think it's right before Mordecai actually finds out there's two people trying to kill King Xerxes, and he goes and tells King Xerxes, "Hey, these two guys are trying to kill you." And so, like, he basically foils the assassination, and then he forgets about Mordecai. Doesn't remember him after that. Doesn't remember that happened. And then a couple of years later on, Haman makes the decree, and Haman really hates Mordecai. And so Haman comes out and he's like, "I'm going to put Mordecai on a pole that I sharpened and put in my yard." And that doesn't end up happening, but he comes out and tells the king. He just
Oh,
comes and
it's
talks to the king.
Jonah.
The king, Jonah. Yeah. They're
Yeah,
so sad that they even put in
yeah,
Nineveh they put the sackcloth on the. I know.
that's right.
I forgot about that.
It was
So
literally in the Pointman semester.
the one we just did.
Yeah.
But okay, so after the assassination attempt, and it gets spoiled because Mordecai, the king is like reading in his bed one day all the things that happened in his reign because I guess he's sleepy and he has just he's trying to go to sleep and he has this big book of things that happened in his reign. So they come out and they start reading all the things that happened, and he reads that Mordecai was one of the reasons that he didn't get assassinated. He's like, "What did we ever do for that guy? That foiled the assassination? Like, we didn't do anything for him." So he's like, "Okay, cool." That same time, Haman comes in, the guy that hates Mordecai wants to kill him, and because he's Jewish, he says King tells him, "Hey, what do we do for somebody we want to honor?" And he's thinking the king's talking about him. So
Yeah.
he goes, "I would put a robe on him. I would let him go out in the streets with your horse and say, 'Hey, this guy's awesome. He's amazing. Let's send his praises up.'" So that's what he tells the king. The king's like, "Okay, go and get Mordecai and do exactly that what you told me that you want to honor and do it for him." And this makes him so mad. He gets so furious. He goes home and just distraught, and his wife and
Yeah.
him are just like, "Man, I had to go and honor this guy that I really hate and I'm trying to kill." So that's when he sharpens the pole and puts it in his yard. So then the story kind of pivots, and the Mordecai is super sad. So he goes and tells Esther, "Is like, hey, we need to stop this plan from happening." And so he puts himself in sackcloth. It's really sad. Goes out and sits in front of the gate. And I think maybe this is maybe one of the faults that maybe he had. He was maybe too sad, too distraught, and didn't really trust the Lord like he needed to. So that's kind of maybe just picking up, trying to draw at straws, about
Trying
trying
to
to find
find
the
something. Yeah.
human element in him. Yeah. So Esther, he tells Esther, "Hey, you were made queen for a time like this to save our people, you and our people." And he said, "If you do not do this for us and try to tell the king and get this whole plan squashed, then deliverance is going to come from somewhere else. So it might as well be from you." So he always had a really good advice. He was very good. He was strategic in what he did. So that's something that Mordecai, as we could glean from him. And so the really cool story. Mordecai says that to Esther. Esther makes a banquet. Says, "Everybody come out to my banquet." And so the king is there and Haman's there, and he tells the king, because the king really loves Esther, "Someone's trying to kill me." And he's like, "Who would dare try to kill you?" He's like, "Well, it's Haman, this guy that's sitting right here, your second in command." And he's like, he gets mad, puts a cloth over his head because he knows he's about to die, and he's like begging and pleading to not get killed. And they go out and they actually put him on the pole that he set up for Mordecai. So they stick him on a pole. And so I'm saying the story is wild. So just go and read it. There's more details. I'm kind of butchering the cool details and the cool points of it. But and then
You know, we battle with translations, not battle, but we discuss from the point of view of two different translations pretty frequently.
yeah,
Like, it's not
yeah.
like this is one of the few times that, like, whenever I'm hearing you say it, I only had time to
Mhm.
read it in one,
Mm.
and as I hear you say it, there's so many little details that are so
Yep.
different, which
Hmm.
is just so
Really?
funny, like, even the king's name is different.
Interesting.
Ahasuerus? I don't even know, but
Mm.
Xerxes is way easier to say, and it may just
Yeah.
be a translation of the name, at some point
Yep.
in history, but even, like, you're talking about a spike, it's a gallows. Like, he
Hmm.
set up a gallows and
Hmm.
the ESV, and so it's just, like, very visual, like, he was set it up for Mordecai and his people, and then they switched, and then it ended
Hmm.
up being they
Yeah.
died on that gallows.
Uno reverse them, and then he's the one who gets put in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's just interesting, I don't know,
Yeah.
we rarely do we have, like, difference in,
Mm.
like, the story, you know what I mean? Like, we have
Mm.
a
Yeah.
difference in, like, a wordage or a verbiage or something, I don't know.
Sure.
It's not really important in this one, but I just thought it was interesting, and I
That
looked
is
through,
interesting.
like, 3 different translations, and they all are a little different on the names, while you were
That's true.
going through that.
Yeah.
Xerxes is in
So
most of them.
most of them. Yeah. So learned from Pastor Craig Rochelle, like when you do your reading through the Bible, like change the translation every once in a while, just to kind of like, because I've read through it twice now with NLT. So next time I read through it, I actually am going to do a new translation. So I got to figure out, pray about which translation I'm going to use next. But that is very interesting, and it's gonna be kind of cool, like kind of hearing stories that are the same stories, but just told in a different way. So looking forward to that. But
Yeah,
anyway,
and
so
it's
let's
not that
finish up. Go ahead.
yeah, it's not that it's different, it's just a different, like, I don't know, there's just little things that are a little different. I'm gonna look at one
Yeah.
more.
All
Yeah,
right.
it's
So
funny,
then,
ESV and King James for that A name.
interesting.
Yeah.
So then, after he gets Haman gets put on the pole, Esther and Mordecai's plans. They actually make a plan to reverse this, and the Jews can actually defend themselves. So then he sends that out. Decree. He says, "What I say cannot be reversed. So you need to send something out to kind of like help the Jewish people, so they can fight
Mhm.
back and not get murdered by all of the people who are trying to murder them." So they send that out. They send out to everybody, and they kill a bunch of people who are trying to kill them. And a lot of people actually get converted to Judaism because of that happening. They didn't want to get killed, so they like, I'm going to convert to Judaism so that I don't get killed by the Jews. So they fight back, and Mordecai gets elevated to the highest power where Haman's power was. Very awesome story change of really switched everything with Haman. Actually got his stuff and got his power. So that was pretty cool. And then Mordecai's greatness. They feast for 2 days. They actually make a day of celebration in the future because of Mordecai. Call it the Day of
Yeah,
Purim.
yep. Just say it creates a new feast for the
New
faith.
feast. But that's kind of the butchered version of the story of Esther and the story of Mordecai. So I
Yeah,
don't know if you had any
highlights
points.
yeah, I would say highlights of the story just simply is that so the queen comes in, the king asks her to do something she's not comfortable doing.
Yeah.
He his pride and manhood feels threatened a
Mm.
little bit. Fears that it will lose power for all of the men in his kingdom. So
Mm.
he exiles his wife and goes searching for a new one.
Yep.
That's how we end up. He brings in all of these young women, and Esther is one of them.
Yep.
And along with Esther comes Mordecai, who brings his own brand of rebellion, trouble, and questioning of authority. But also along the way, he has some incredible, like, he stops the plan to kill the king at one point.
Yep.
Um, and it's still later they try to kill him again anyway.
Yep.
So I mean, he has one of these stories like we see a lot of times in the Old Testament where there's someone who stands on principle and on faith to overcome a situation, even when the situation is not in their favor at
Yep.
all. But yeah, this is typically a story that's read, I would say, from a female perspective, where
Yep.
you're
For sure.
looking at Esther as the focal point. It
Yep.
was weird, not weird, but interesting
Yeah.
knowing how we were going to discuss it. I read it looking at Mordecai
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
kind of not picking apart, but really focusing on him and what's
Yep.
going on, what he's doing, how he's interacting with us. And I've caught myself doing this studying for the semester, looking at some of the guys we're going to talk about actually in the semester, but not just looking at their story or what's going on, but actually looking at them. And like, I'll find myself searching for the next point of
Mm.
conversation about who they are and what
Yeah.
makes them who they are, which I
Yeah.
think is interesting. And I think it's an interesting way to read the Bible for guys who are looking for like what we're doing when we're talking about how to see what made them men, what made them
Mhm.
significant, what made them
Mhm.
what makes it important that they are in the Bible for
Mhm.
us as men, not just for the context of their story. And I think it's just an interesting way to study guys in the Bible
Yeah,
overall.
for sure. I don't know if you want to talk about like he adopted Esther,
Yeah, that was
and
the first
he
point.
didn't he didn't have to. He could have
Yeah,
just said, "Man, you're on your own." But I think that kind of shows to him his morality and that he trusted God and that he would take her in, be his own daughter. So he kind of shows you the man that he is, that he would adopt somebody that he didn't have to. He didn't have to take care of himself. Another
yeah, I
point that I
thought that was
wanted.
the first point where we saw like his character come out.
Yep.
Like, and it doesn't give us any context of like
Mm.
reward or value
No.
for doing it. It's just that he did it.
Yep.
Which I think is cool, and I think it can be applied in so many places in our own life. I mean, we see
Mm.
men who literally adopt children and things and take
Yep.
care of them, but I think it's also you're looking at raising somebody and helping to raise someone that's
Mm.
not your own, and we see that happen a lot of times, even in just like serving and helping kids and raising up
Yep.
and being the man that they see in their life of faith because you're walking that out. I think it's an interesting. It was the first thing I saw and took from it as well.
Yes, I mean that's something that you guys did as well. You guys adopted, and I don't know what that's
Yeah.
like, but I know that's the task. These
It
people.
is, it is. It's an interesting thing that you deal with,
Yeah.
and again, the context for his adoption of her is not clear. So it's just
Yeah.
like, "Oh, he did it," but yeah, it is an interesting and you do feel there's a responsibility, I think,
Mm.
to do it. This has kinda something to do with this, but, there's a pastor, Kevin Wallace, who has adopted some kids, and he was at a conference or something. I was watching a message he gave one time, and he's pointing at the picture behind him and he's pointing out all of his kids. And he goes, "You know why? I'll show you a picture of all these kids we've adopted. Because if the church is going to keep talking against abortion and all these things, you better be ready to do something about it." And it's kind of true. It's like, yeah, that
Yeah.
makes total sense. You can talk all you want, but if you're not supporting the people who need the support and the help,
Yeah.
which is that's a stretch for the story of Mordecai. I just want to point out. I just think
Yeah.
that story is hilarious. He's like, "Yeah, that's so and so, that's so and so, that's so and so. And if you're gonna talk about it, you better do something about it."
Talk about
It's
it. Be about it.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I
That's
do
cool.
think it gives us like whenever you're like having a character witness in a court case
Mm.
or in a trial, they're
Mm.
trying to
Yeah.
establish like a
Mm.
pattern of character for a person. That's
Yeah.
kind of I think what's going on here. Like it doesn't matter so much. They could have said this is her uncle. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to say like, oh, he adopted and raised her as his own. Like that's a establishment of character in scripture. If that
Sure.
makes sense. I think it's the first place that
No.
it really kind of lets us in there.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. And then the next time you kind of see like his character and who he is, you kind of see it whenever he protects the king, even though you know he does not like the king. It's like there's no way that this guy could make these decrees and just be crazy and as wild as he is, and he actually enjoy the king. So I mean, he could have just said, "Well, hope these guys kill a king," because if I don't say anything, nobody would have ever figured it out, and then he could have just gone and just let it be and just said, "Well, I didn't hear anything, I didn't see anything, so we'll see what happens." But he
Yeah.
didn't. That shows his character, and he says, "Even though I don't like the king, I'm going to try to do what I'm supposed to do and kind of have that government authority, is what you were saying earlier, and tell the king, even though probably not going to get rewarded for it. The king never rewards anybody. Like you said, he had to open up the book to even figure out that he's going to get rewarded. Like later, way later on in his life, he's like, I'm probably not going to get rewarded for it, but I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, even if no one else is going to." So another point to
Yeah.
him being just a good guy, God the guy.
Yeah. If you just, I mean, think about though, too, of all the stories of kings in the Old Testament,
Mm.
the next one is almost never better than the one before it.
No,
So
especially
maybe too,
all of them.
he knows the history of David, Solomon,
Mm.
Rehoboam. He knows the history of Nebuchadnezzar. He knows like all of
Mm.
these, which Nebuchadnezzar's son. was crazier than he was passed
Yep.
down. So you're talking about this, he would have known like this lineage of bad dudes who
Mm.
take over for their dads or whoever was next in line. So while
Yeah.
yes, they're made I again I think it does give us context to character of who this guy
Yep.
is, but he
Mhm.
also would have had some knowledge of like, well, maybe that next dude ain't gonna be any better. Which I don't know who the
Yeah.
next in line was. I don't know if it even gives us I don't remember it giving context for who it would have been anyway. So
I think the story just ends with the King Xerxes still
yeah.
being in power, and then him Mordecai being number two. So,
Yeah.
so we know that he is an awesome guy. He takes care of his a daughter that he adopted. He's steadfast to the king, even though he probably doesn't want to, doesn't have to. And then he's steadfast about even when he was told he needed to bow down because his life probably was in the balance there. He knew it, but he's still not going to bow down to anyone but God himself. So I know that's something that we can kind of take that and be like, this guy was a godly guy. He's not going to bow down. He's not going to waver in any part of his life, and he's going to be directly steadfast on God, even though his life could he knew he probably could get killed because of this. There's no doubt in his mind, probably.
Yeah. Because I mean it's not even the king necessarily he's bowing down to. It's
Mm.
the second in
Number two.
command of
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Haman or is that right? Come on, Haman. However that
Haman. Yeah, Haman. It's
the
yeah.
Arkansas version, Haman.
I say Haman, but yeah, Haman. But I'm
That
sure it's
Sherwood
pronounced
accent. What's
yeah,
up,
I'm sure it's
Haman?
pronounced something different than Haman, but that's the way. Yeah, that's
Come
the way
on.
I say it. They just said that's not how you're supposed to say it. I'm like whatever. People know what
Yeah.
I'm talking about.
What did the audiobook say?
I think it says Hyman.
Haman.
It says it with more of an accent than I'm saying it. It sounds
Come
better.
on.
I feel like yeah, it doesn't have the more like the Arkansas translation version. So
Yeah. Okay.
all right, so so he doesn't bow down. He's an awesome guy, and then so I feel like he always instilled into Esdher his whole life about kind of raising your family how you should. He was probably amazing dad, and that she listened to him throughout her entire life. She never wavered, and she didn't hate her dad for it or anything. And so she knew that she was Jewish, and that she had Jewish family, and they were out there. So I feel like another point where he is a guy who is a godly man, and he instilled that onto his children as well because she had those same values that he did, and she didn't waver because he raised her correctly. So I feel like that's another point where you can point to I'm a good Christian guy, and I take good Jewish guy, and then I take care of my family the way I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's another way that we can look at Mordecai and be like, dang, good, awesome guy. Another point, another check mark. Like you were saying.
Yeah, that's true. She doesn't forget who she is. And he
Nope.
does remind her too. It's like, hey, these are our
Yep.
people.
Yep.
And keeps that front of mind for sure. Yeah. Oh, it's interesting.
And then the faults, if you could say, is like whenever he finds out that his people are going to be destroyed, he puts that sackcloth on. He sits there and just wallows in it for days. And he goes up to the gate because he can't go in the gate, the king's palace, because he's just in sackcloth and ashes. And Esther's like, put some clothes on. He's like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to sit here and wallow. I don't know. Maybe that's something he just felt in his heart that he needed to do to petition to God because he is just extremely sad. He's fasting, not eating anything, not drinking anything, and just in there being extremely sad. But I feel like I would be the same way. Like, I'm going to get killed. My entire family, everyone I know is going to be getting killed. So, like, whatever I can do to petition to God, I'm going to do. But maybe he went a little bit overboard. I don't know. What are your what are your thoughts on that?
I think for the sake of our study, I think we are kind of nitpicking against,
Yeah,
but
for
I
sure.
do think it shows his humanity,
Mm,
like
yep.
which we know he's man, we know he's not God, but it's like, when we look at some of these people in history,
Mm,
when you look at Noah got drunk. We have a
yep.
very explicit point of like he screwed
Yep.
up. Or when we
Yep.
look at Moses killed the Egyptian, like we see a very explicit moment.
Yep.
But for Mordecai, yeah, it's almost like his emotions are the human expression that we
Mm,
see in his story.
mm,
So it's like, yes, he's upset. Yeah, he's sad. Yes, he's
mm,
frustrated. Yes, he's obstinate. Like
mm,
all of these things we see him play out. But so it's really his emotion that we pull from. Like
mm,
if we didn't agree with authority, we would stand up against I would hope that we would stand up against the authority.
Yeah.
We don't know unless we have to do it, but I would hope that that's what we would do. We see that example here. If we knew all of our friends and family and everyone from our church and everyone from our community of believers was going to perish, we would be sad if we felt powerless to do anything, which I'm sure he
Yeah.
does. What's he going to do? He's
Sure.
one guy against the king. So, I think it just shows him being a man. It just shows him being human. Not that we should just all waller. Like, we get this idea of like Braveheart, when it comes to like protecting till the last man. But it's like at some point you are just outmanned, outgunned, and outnumbered. And he may be sad feeling that. I don't know. We don't have enough. It's kind of silent on that. There's not a lot of context there.
Yeah, he was just like, whenever he was petitioning to his daughter, whenever he said like, God is going to handle this anyway, but you need to do it. Like, get it done. I know that's just like Esther's point where she's like, all right, if I die, I die. I'm gonna go do it. Like, that's awesome because like he encouraged that to happen.
Yeah, I was gonna point that out about her, and it kind of spills over into him. But the first queen is thrown out for kind of breaking the law of the land and the cultural norm by disobeying the king's order. Esther does the same thing. Esther she just like, hey, she would not have been called or gone in front of the king on her own accord. She would have had to been called by the king. And she's like, no, you tell him pretty much I'm coming. Like, we need to talk. And so she's already breaking the norm. Her courage in that point, though, is because she's one queen removed from the one who got thrown out. This isn't like she's had some years to think about this. Like, she saw it happen not long ago. But she still does it. And it's kind of like that's the way she kind of communicates with Mordecai, too. And the way she's just kind of very much like, let's do it. Let's get after it. We need to do this. We need to move forward. She kind of sets the tone and the example there, and he kind of follows that lead a little bit in this, which is interesting. But I think that's an interesting part of the story, and it's one of the powerful women's point of views for the story too. Is that like she stood on that?
You can't read the story of Esther and be like, nah, I'm just gonna talk about more. Esther was awesome. She's like, I'm gonna go. If I die, I die. Like, she's dope. She could be a point man. we'll let her join the point man. She can come in.
Went in first, she's so it's all good.
Awesome.
No doubt.
Cool. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a cool story. It's not a book of the Bible that I've spent a whole lot of time in, admittedly. In fact, it's odd that you brought it up because Montana and I were driving the other day and we were talking about like books. We just sat down and read the Bible recap book in a year together over the last whatever year-ish, a little less than a year. And through it, this was one that she took it hit hard. Like, she took this one probably the same way I took to Daniel and was excited by that story for men. But it was just interesting because I didn't remember it the same way she did. But whenever I went back and read it, it is an incredible story. Mordecai is an interesting guy. I think his story is not unlike you and I. Like, he wants, and the men who are listening to this or listen to this in the future, he wants to live out. He wants to do what is right. He wants to raise his family, it seems, from what we have in the text. But he still gets scared. He still gets mad. He still gets obstinate. He still does all these things just like we do.
Yeah.
But in the end, he still wants to stand on it, and he still wants to do what's best and do what's right. And he does need a little nudge and a little help sometimes to do it, like we do as well. And I think that's kind of what's cool about this study is that we can look at these things and be like, all right, there's a lot of cool stuff going on here, but what made this dude tick? Why is it important? Let's read it from a different point of view. Let's read it from the point of view. Let's learn from this dude, from this man. What's he got going on?
Different translations.
Different translations. Different kings, apparently. Ahasuerus. I know I said that wrong. Check that out on the audio. But the King James has the same one, the same king's name, which I think is interesting. Which I would say they're probably more aligned than the NLT to anything else. The NLT and the NIV both had Xerxes. So I've had all four of them out at this point. Checking it out.
Yeah, I saw you over there flipping through all your Bibles.
Luckily, they all sit right there, so I can just grab them and go through them. I got a couple more. I have a weird Genesis translation back there.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, Robert Alter. He's a Jewish scholar who translated the Genesis story. It's an interesting. It's the one that Hillsdale College uses for their study on Genesis. Anyway, interesting.
The last thing I want to talk about, kind of exactly what you're talking about, is like I feel like Mordecai was such a forward thinker and a looking to the future thinker and planner and kind of like a orchestrator. I feel like that sometimes we need to have that in our lives as well, not just kind of go through life and just get what life comes, like just whatever life comes at us, and then we handle it, but like plan ahead and like be, because like at a certain point in life, Mordecai is like, I'm going to make this decree, and then everyone else will be able to fight back. He could have just said like, well, crap, you can't take away this decree you've made, so let's just sit here and not do anything about it. He's like, okay, I'm going to write it out. Everyone, we can defend ourselves. We can do it on this date. We're going to have this plan ahead. So like, he's a very good planner as well, and kind of a orchestrator, because he orchestrated the whole thing that happened with Esther as well. If he wouldn't have been there, the future plan wouldn't have happened. And so he used his biblical text, his teaching, to like see into the future and be like, let's make a plan so we can honor God and save ourselves and save our people. So I think that's something we don't always think about as like men, Christian men. We need to be forward thinking, but things are going to happen in the future. Let's prepare for them now before they come.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah. Interesting that, they can't reverse a decree. You would think they would have learned so many prior to this where things happen, the kings get upset because they can't change the law that they just made. It's like you'd think they would have learned before now.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Is like I think that just goes to his power. Like he has so much power. If I say it, there's no going back on it. Like that's just kind of the guy that Xerxes was. He's like, I'm so powerful, so wild, and whatever I say, it goes. I can't even take it back because like I said it, it's gone, it's out there, no take backsies. So I thought that was
I've already said
very
it a couple
interesting.
times. I've already said it a couple times, but in the story of Daniel, there's some parallels here. I think I keep coming back to it, but that's what happens to Daniel when he goes in the lion's dens. The king decrees that it becomes illegal to worship, and so whenever they throw Daniel in the lion's den, he can't do anything about it. He's stuck because he's already signed, sealed, delivered the fate. It's like you didn't, like, you're the king, but the way the law was set up, they couldn't go back on it. So yeah, it is powerful, but it's like it's forever binding even against yourself, which is crazy. So I don't know. I just think it's interesting that they would write it in that way. It's like y'all didn't change, like he didn't change that. Like whenever he threw all the other guards into the lion's den, they ripped in their families and everybody's dead. He didn't look at that and be like, never again. Like we're gonna set this up to where I can change whatever I want from now on.
Yeah,
like that.
Just put in
conversation.
Yeah, just put in another law that says I can change the laws that I put in, and then it would be good, right?
If I decree it, it becomes whatever, and then it's like, okay, well, I changed my mind. Change yours. Yeah, it makes no sense. That part's kind of crazy, but I don't know. I think that was a story. I'm glad that you pulled this one. This isn't one that was on my list for this study in this series, I can tell you. So I think it's super cool. I think this was a cool one. So I appreciate you bringing it up. And I already spoiled it on the front end that we've got a Noah one in the can recorded. It was pretty awesome. And this Sunday we're going to be going through Daniel, so maybe that's also why I've got it in my head. With Shane, who will be back on the podcast this week, which is fun.
Bring him back.
So it's going to be good. But this study is called Act Like Men. This is just a taste. This isn't what the semester nights are going to look like. This is much more a general conversation about a man from the Old Testament. Make sure that you're at the Pointman semester. They kick off on January the 17th, the 24th, 31st, and the 7th at both Sherwood and at Cabot. A couple more housekeeping items before we get out of here today. Make sure that you hit the comment section. There is a place to register. We're giving away a drone at both Sherwood and at Cabot on the first night of Pointman, and you have an opportunity to get an extra entry into the drawing by registering today in the comments here on this live. Hit the registration link. Sign up today, whether you're on YouTube or on Facebook right now. You'll get an extra entry. You do have to be present to win, but it'll get you a slot into that drawing on the first night of Point Man. There's also going to be a couple of opportunities for you to stop by a booth in the lobby the last weekend, the 31st of January, the 7th and the 14th, or excuse me, the 31st of December, the 7th and 14th of January. There will be an opportunity for you to stop by, say what's up to the dudes of Point Man, and get another entry in this thing. We're giving away entries left and right for this Joker.
Oh, nice. Sick.
Just
what kind of
drone,
is it?
You know, one of those you connect your phone to it, you can see it flying.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a cool deal. It's a cool deal. I actually haven't ordered it yet, so I'm willing it into existence.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. It's Christmas time.
It is. Yeah, I was kidding. We're gonna have a cool drone. We've given away in the past. They're pretty sweet. In fact, at the Bago tournament last year, we had one drone out of 12 prizes. Some people got like a free shot at their prize that they won because nobody put in on anything. The drone had like half a bucket full
Everybody.
of entries. Yeah, everybody wanted one. There was like a camping cooking set. There was 2 people in that one. There was like this cool hatchet shovel set. There was like 2 people in that one, but there were like 400 people in the drone drawing. So it'll be a fun time. But you get extra drawings if you hit the link in here. You sign up between now and the first night of Point Man. You'll get 1 entry. You stop by the Point Man booth in the lobby, sign up again, you'll get a 2nd entry. And then if you show up on the first night of Point Man, you're not going to be left out. You'll still get a chance to win. And there may be more opportunities to win. I don't know. We may come up with more challenges or reasons for you to get an entry into this drawing. And then finally, last thing, we got new merch up. If you were joined us last week, we've got the Act Like Men sweatshirt. First Corinthians 16:13. Luke's got one. Let's see it.
I got one right here. So I got it waiting for
online salesman. Act Like Men. First Corinthians 16 and 13. There you go. That's what it looks like. Men on the front, Point Man on the back. That church, all the things. Both Sherwood and Capital have some. $25 for those. It's going to be an awesome semester. And make sure that you like and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Make sure you're following Point Man on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, if you just want some clips and some fun stuff over there. But yeah, Point Man's everywhere. We're trying to reach men with the gospel, helping them grow in all aspects of their life. And we're excited to be a part of it. So that's all I got for tonight. Luke, you got anything else?
No, just read the story of Esther. I promise you will not regret it. You'll love it.
Yeah. And if you don't like to read, it's not all that long. So
nope. Not 9 chapters, so let's do it.
Yeah, you got this. 9 short chapters. They're not 9 numbers chapters where you got to read a bunch of numbers. It's actually a fun story from start to finish. So, well, all right, man. I enjoyed talking Mordecai this evening. I hope that you all have a blessed weekend. We will see you Sunday at that church, and get ready for Point Man, January 17th, 6:30 p.m. All the that church campuses, everything's going down on that night. It's going to be incredible. I hope to see you then. Have a good one.
See you.